After a night of reckless decisions fueled by alcohol, I found myself tangled in a whirlwind of events I never saw coming. It all began with a high school reunion, and by the end of it, I had not only woken up next to Victoria, the girl I had secretly loved for years, but also ended up married to her. The morning after, I woke up with a pounding headache. As I rolled over and opened my eyes, I found myself staring directly into a pair of wide, innocent, doe-like eyes. Startled, I sat up abruptly, only to realize Victoria was there, wearing nothing but her lingerie, her cheeks flushed, and a few strawberry marks trailing down her neck. "You're awake," she said softly, her voice tinged with shyness. My mind exploded with chaos, as if a bomb had gone off in my brain. I hastily pulled back the covers and discovered I was completely naked. Glancing back at Victoria, I noticed her trembling lashes and slightly parted lips. The memories of the previous night were blurry, but I vaguely recalled us drinking too much at the reunion. She had asked me to walk her home since she lived nearby, and somehow, we ended up in bed. "I'm sorry," I said, holding my head in my hands. "I don't remember anything." Realizing how that could be misinterpreted, I quickly added, No, I meant—" "I know," she interrupted, her eyes lowering as she bit her lip. "I was drunk too. It was mutual." Her voice faltered, and she hesitated before continuing. "It's just, this was my first time." I was stunned into silence. Victoria, this breathtaking woman at 25, with her flawless features and graceful figure, claiming it was her first time? Surely she must have been saving herself for someone she truly cared about. But why me? And what did she mean by saying this? Was she expecting something from me? Money, maybe? No, that would be too crude. While I was lost in thought, she placed her hand gently on mine. Her gaze, soft and watery, made me shiver. "Let's get married," she said. "I'll try my best to be a good wife." Thus, by Monday, I found myself married to my college crush. It all felt surreal. I told her, "I took a few days off. Since we're officially married now, why don't we take a trip somewhere to relax?" Biting her lip, she asked, "You mean a honeymoon?" "Do you not like the idea?" I asked cautiously. She shook her head with a shy smile. "No, I'd love that. When do we leave, husband?" She wrapped her arms around mine, her soft figure pressing against me. The way she called me husband was something I wasn't used to, and her sudden affection left me flustered. Coughing to mask my embarrassment, I tried to regain composure, but she seemed to misinterpret my reaction. Lowering her head, her tone turned despondent. "I'm sorry. Calling you that must make you uncomfortable. I forgot you only married me out of responsibility." No, I stammered, scratching my head. "If you like calling me that, it's fine." At that, her face brightened, and she smiled sweetly. "Then it's only fair if you call me something in return," she teased. I froze, unsure of her meaning. Was she implying what I thought she was? No, surely I was overthinking. As I hesitated, her expression dimmed again. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I must have overstepped. I shouldn't expect too much from a loveless marriage." "Stop," I said, raising a hand. "Don't say that." She halted, looking at me with a soft smile. I scratched my head awkwardly before pulling her into a hug. "Wife," I muttered. That marked the beginning of our honeymoon. On the first day, she dragged me to countless places, her enthusiasm never waning. By evening, I was utterly exhausted, collapsing onto the hotel bed. Meanwhile, she was still buzzing with energy, meticulously organizing the accessories she had bought. "Don't you ever get tired?" I asked, laughing. "Not really," she replied with a grin. I could keep going. As she rummaged through her suitcase for a change of clothes, she suddenly paused, biting her lip. "When you asked if I was tired, were you suggesting WWE? You know." The soda I was sipping almost shot out of my nose. I swallowed it hastily, resulting in a coughing fit. She quickly came over, gently patting my back, her cheeks glowing red. "I meant go for a walk," she clarified hastily. "What were you thinking?" "Of course, a walk." I nodded vigorously. "If you want to go, I'll join you." She shook her head, a playful glint in her eye. Actually, I changed my mind. I'm feeling a bit tired now. She deliberately adjusted the strap of her lace lingerie, adding, I think I'll take a shower and head to bed early. The sound of running water echoed from the bathroom. I sat on the edge of the bed, my emotions in turmoil. Victoria, the college beauty I had once thought unattainable, was now my wife. Everything about this situation felt like a dream, and yet there was a lingering guilt. I had taken her first time in a drunken haze and then married her in a whirlwind. It felt as though I had wronged her, like I was some villain in an old movie who had forced an innocent woman into submission. The water stopped, and she emerged, casually draped in a translucent silk nightgown. As I stood up to take my turn in the shower, she stopped me. Wait, she said, turning her back to me. Can you help me? I can't seem to fasten my bra. Could you help me button this up? Emma tugged at my sleeve as she spoke and was about to lift her shirt. I instinctively asked, what? She immediately let go of the fabric, looking aggrieved. I overstepped. I know. We're not truly in love. Having dated her felt like the worst karmic punishment imaginable. To be honest, aside from her stunning looks, Victoria was a walking disaster with no boundaries. When we were together, she'd cling to her male best friend on one arm and her childhood sweetheart on the other, leaving me, the supposed boyfriend, to stand by like an invisible fool. Once, I booked a lavish dinner party to celebrate her birthday. She ditched everyone to see her childhood sweetheart. Another time, I was bedridden with an illness, and she was out in a bar, flirting and exchanging sultry glances with her male bestie, drinking so much that she developed acute gastritis and expected me to take care of her. Now that we've broken up after a few days of no contact, she was suddenly trying to reach me again. I couldn't comprehend her mindset. Without hesitation, I declined the call. Emma asked, not answering? Yeah, no need, I replied. After my shower, I returned to find Emma already asleep. I sighed, walked over, and pulled the blanket over her. It had indeed been an exhausting day. It wasn't long before I, too, was fast asleep. Half asleep, I suddenly felt someone calling my name. Emma's fingers traced their way across my face, from my eyes to my nose and finally to my lips. She leaned in, kissed me, and whispered, Sincere, I finally got you. Meanwhile, in the living room of another house, Victoria furiously threw her phone to the ground. What's wrong, Vicky? Why the tantrum? Tina, her close friend, had just walked in and witnessed the scene. Bending down, she picked up the shattered phone and tossed it into the trash can. It's late. Why on earth did you drag me over here? Victoria sat with her arms crossed, clearly fuming. She pursed her lips and said, Sincere actually dared to hang up on me. Tina raised an eyebrow. And that's why you're throwing a fit? Victoria snapped. What's wrong with that? Tina frowned. Seriously? You made me come all the way here just because he didn't answer your call? Vicky, are you okay? Victoria didn't argue back but slumped into the couch, deep in thought. After a while, she huffed. Sincere has never hung up on me before. Tina rolled her eyes. Why overthink it? Maybe he's just busy. Busy at 11:30 at night? Busy doing what? Bedroom gymnastics? Victoria muttered, her face turning crimson at her own words. Tina quickly sat beside her, trying to calm her down. Come on, Vicky, don't stress. Sincere has always been so loyal to you. He adores you. He'll definitely call you back soon. And if he doesn't? Victoria asked. Then you should reach out to him, Tina suggested. Victoria frowned. Why should I? It wasn't my fault. Why should I be the one to compromise? I'm not giving him that satisfaction. It's not like I care that much anyway. If he doesn't want to answer, then he might as well never answer. Tina shrugged. Well then, if you're so determined, why not just break up with him? There are plenty of fish in the sea, you know. Victoria stayed silent for a moment, then asked softly, But what if he really doesn't call me back? Tina let out an exasperated sigh. Vicky, I'm going to be brutally honest because I consider you a close friend. Victoria tilted her head. Go ahead. Vicky, you're being ridiculous. Honestly, you're acting like a complete mess. Should we start calling you Little Contradiction? You won't reach out to him, But you're unwilling to break up either. You claim you don't care for him, yet you're losing sleep because he didn't answer your call. You want to act aloof? Then commit to it and cut him off completely. If you still care, then reach out and patch things up. What you're doing right now, half caring, half not, is just going to leave you with nothing in the end. Victoria looked at her, speechless. Tina sighed again and continued, Vicky, listen to me. Love requires communication. Acting high and mighty and throwing tantrums won't get you anywhere. If you really want a future with him, you need to have an honest conversation, got it? Victoria replied, I don't get it. I'm not wrong. He's the one who should apologize to me. Tina was at a loss for words. After a few days of indulgence, the honeymoon phase was over. Returning to the grind at work, my phone rang again. It was the same familiar contact name. Without hesitation, I blocked Victoria's number. Another grueling day under Baldy's tyranny began. That old devil was as cunning as ever, piling on endless overtime. If I complained about the workload, he'd drown me in motivational speeches about how with great power comes great responsibility, and how true achievers never grumble about their circumstances. But the moment I brought up a raise, he'd spin fantasies about how, if I worked hard enough, I'd one day marry a rich, beautiful woman and reach the pinnacle of life. Living in luxury and driving a fancy car is just around the corner? Who are you kidding? I said to Emma, sharing the ridiculous idea. It was clear she had been poo'd too. We vented to each other in the chat, empathizing hard. After a long day at work, I headed downstairs to go home, only to spot Emma waiting for me at the entrance. A couple of coworkers teased, Wow, you two are inseparable, huh? I forced a sheepish smile, waved goodbye to them, and walked toward Emma. She beamed, hooked her arm through mine, and said, You must be exhausted, let's go home and eat. Feeling awkward, I hesitated. My place or yours? Emma giggled, covering her mouth. Our place, of course. Our place? I was still trying to decipher her words when someone familiar approached us. That figure, that face, it was unmistakably Victoria. Her brows furrowed as she demanded, Why didn't you answer my calls? I retorted, Victoria, are you out of your mind? We broke up. Why on earth do I have to answer your calls? What is it? Are those two guys not enough for you anymore? What's next? Adding me as your ex? Starting a collection? Her face turned red as she stammered, I told you they're just friends. Why do you have to be so mean? Don't be mad. Let's go back, okay? With that, she tried to grab my other arm. Before I could react, Emma stepped in, calmly prying her hand off. Miss, Emma said gently, it's not proper to be pulling and tugging at someone in public like this. Victoria shot her a glare, fuming. I'm Sincere's girlfriend. Who are you to butt into our conversation? What are you, anyway? Emma furrowed her brows ever so slightly, her demeanor instantly shifting to that of a delicate, wilting flower. She leaned into me, almost collapsing in my arms. You're absolutely right, sis, she said softly. You're Sincere's ex-girlfriend. Even after cheating, you still shamelessly come crawling back to reconcile. Unlike me, I'm just his plain and ordinary wife. Victoria bit her lip, her face twisting in fury. She stomped her foot, looking like she was ready to kill Emma with her stiletto, and who could blame her? Victoria had been spoiled her whole life, always getting what she wanted, never having to endure such humiliation. But after a moment of anger, she regained her composure, rolling her eyes with disdain. You say you're his wife? Then tell me this. Did you know Sincere chased me for 3 whole years? He was utterly devoted to me, always at my beck and call. Everyone knew how much he adored me. Miss, if you're going to make up stories, at least make them believable. You claim you're married to him? Who'd buy that? She turned to me, scoffing. Sincere, this is so pathetic. Just because Ethan got dumped and I gave him a hug and poured him a glass of milk, you're accusing me of cheating? And now you're making up some fake marriage to lie to me? Really? I was dumbfounded. A hug and a glass of milk? That's how she described it? Only Victoria could say something so absurd with a straight face. I vividly remembered the scene. A tiny bathtub, her and Ethan sitting together in swimwear, their skin brushing against each other in the water. She'd even scattered some flower petals and poured milk into the tub. And she called that a hug? God knows where that situation would have led if I hadn't come home early from my trip. Grinding my teeth, I snapped, "Victoria, I should have never paid for your philosophy degree. By your logic, if two people sleep together, it's just, what? Repeated, frequent mutual contact. And what's this about me lying? Are you saying I somehow knew you'd show up today, so I hired an actress and rehearsed this entire scene? How does your brain even work?" She trembled with rage, pointing a finger at my nose. "Sincere, don't you get it? I hate it when you lecture me. You sound like a dad. Tone it down. What's the point of being so stubborn? If you're so tough, then don't come looking for me." Exhausted, I sighed. Sometimes arguing with her felt like shouting into the void. She turned on her heel, announcing, "I'm leaving. Think about what you've done." And just like that, she stormed off, leaving me feeling utterly disgusted, like I'd swallowed a mouthful of something foul. With the drama over, Emma took me to a fully furnished new apartment. "Do you like it?" she asked. I stared at her in disbelief. "What's going on? Did I just hit the jackpot with a rich girl?" She tilted her head, handing me a car key. "Let me reintroduce myself. Baldy is my father." I froze. Wait a second. So this is what living in luxury and driving a fancy car meant? Hold on, weren't Emma and I married by accident? This house, this car, even her, it all felt so. Premeditated. I had mixed feelings, a whirl of emotion surging through me. I almost wanted to throw on a suit and head back to the office for some overtime. "I feel like I've fallen into your trap and I'm still happy about it," I said. "Does this mean I've been sold and I'm even helping you count the money?" Emma just smiled without saying a word. That night we lay in bed, the soft glow of the bedside lamp illuminating the room. Emma nestled into my chest, her head buried against me. I suddenly felt awkward, unsure of what to do. "Have I disrupted your life?" she asked softly. "Of course not," I replied. She paused, then asked again, "Do you still have feelings for Victoria?" "Not at all," I said firmly. "Good," she murmured, snuggling closer and holding me even tighter. She said, "Sincere, please take care of me in the future." That weekend, for the first time, I felt restless not going to work. Early in the morning, just after breakfast, there was a knock at the door. Opening it, I saw an older woman accompanied by a blonde-haired boy. Emma was taken aback and said, "Mom? Billy, what are you two doing here?" I quickly stepped forward and greeted them. "Lady D, not Mom, please. Come in and have a seat." Diana beamed and warmly pulled me over to sit on the couch. She said, "Sincere, how are you adapting to work these past few years? And how are things between you and Emma? You know Walter loves working overtime. He said we should all have a proper gathering next week." I was speechless. Who even came up with that nickname? She then turned to Blondie, who was lugging in loads of gift boxes from the doorway. "Hurry up, kid. Wash some fruit for my son-in-law to try." Billy rolled his eyes, muttering as he unpacked the fruit baskets. "Honestly, it's like I'm not even your real son." Emma chuckled and chided him lightly, taking the fruit from his hands. "I'll handle it. Go sit down and relax." Billy immediately dropped everything and plopped himself down beside me. He stared at me for a moment, making me squirm under his gaze. I forced a polite smile. Suddenly he sighed. "Wow, my sister actually managed to snag you, huh? I mean, what did you even do to deserve being chased by the campus queen?" "You're just an ordinary guy," I replied courteously. "I wouldn't say she chased me. It's a long story, really." Billy grabbed an apple from the coffee table, wiped it on his shirt, and took a bite. "Oh, come on. It was definitely premeditated." Emma coughed lightly as she walked over with a fruit platter. "If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. You're never this talkative at home." I didn't dwell on Billy's words. Diana chatted with me for a while, then suddenly patted my shoulder and asked, "So, you and Emma, are you planning to have kids? How many? When?" I was stunned. When we decided to get married, we didn't think that far ahead. Besides, to be honest, Emma and I weren't even that close yet. I glanced at Emma, trying my best to act affectionate. Honey, how many kids are we planning on having? Emma seemed quite pleased with the term honey, smiling more sweetly than usual. That's up to you, darling, she replied. Diana didn't press further after failing to get a clear answer. She smoothly changed the topic and continued chatting. After a while, I invited them to stay for lunch, but they firmly declined, saying they didn't want to intrude on our couple time. They even dragged a protesting Billy, who had started a game on his phone, out the door. During lunch, Emma said, "We've been married for a while now. How about we visit your parents tomorrow?" I thought about it and agreed. Emma smiled and served me a bowl of corn and rib soup. She said, "My mom can be a bit talkative. I didn't expect her to come today. I hope she didn't upset you?" I replied, "Not at all. We're family after all." Halfway through the meal, Emma suddenly asked, "About what Mom said, have you given it any thought?" I was momentarily confused. "What do you mean?" She looked at me with hopeful eyes. "You know about having kids?" I took a big bite of rice to cover my awkwardness. "Well, that depends on whether you want to." "Depends on me?" she asked, leaning closer. In a soft voice, she added, "I actually really like kids." She moved closer and closer, until there was barely an inch between us. The atmosphere grew intimate. Emma leaned down slightly, her neckline revealing a view that made my breath catch. Our eyes locked, and just as our lips were about to meet, she playfully pulled back. She plucked a grain of rice off my shirt and teased, "You've got rice on you." Meanwhile, Victoria was staring at herself in the mirror, lost in thought. She couldn't help but admire her reflection. She looked absolutely stunning. How could anyone not fall for her? She parted her lips slightly and posed with a sultry, dreamy expression, intending to snap a photo for her social media. But just as she was about to, her phone rang. Annoyed at the interruption, she frowned and answered the call. On the other end, Tina's voice was filled with exasperation. "Victoria, why don't you just apologize to Sincere? This time, it doesn't seem like he's joking about the breakup. I even saw him grocery shopping with another woman the other day. For all you know, they might already be living together. If you keep this up, someone's going to steal him for real." Victoria laughed dismissively. She continued admiring her reflection, striking different poses as she replied, "As if anyone could take him from me. He's so into me, he can't forget me. Besides, we've broken up and gotten back together so many times. Who's the one always begging me to reconcile? Just wait. Once he comes to his senses, he'll come crawling back to me like always." Tina sighed in frustration. "You're impossible. If you actually like him, why not fight for him? Why wait until he's married to someone else to regret it? What's the point of all this drama?" Victoria retorted, "There's no way he'd marry that woman. He only said those things to make me jealous. He wouldn't actually sleep with her. He only loves me." Tina was silent for a moment before snapping, "Victoria, you're hopeless, I'm telling you. Sincere is taking that woman to meet his parents tomorrow. Think about it yourself. As your best friend, I've done all I can. It's up to you now." Victoria hung up the phone and stared blankly at the makeup scattered on her table, her head pounding. She was supposed to be confident and certain that Sincere was hers and hers alone. Yet the memory of seeing him so close and intimate with that unfamiliar woman the other day filled her with inexplicable anger and unease. Staring out the window, she tried to reassure herself. "It's okay," she thought. "Sincere won't fall for anyone else. Worst case scenario, she'd go find him and clear the air. She wouldn't demand an apology or stay mad at him. He'd definitely leave that woman and come back to coax her. Yes, tomorrow she'd go to Sincere's parents' house and make up with him." The next day, Emma and I got everything ready and headed to my parents' place. As soon as we arrived, Emma leaned sweetly against me, greeting my parents with a cheerful, "Mom, Dad." My parents froze for a moment before exclaiming, "Daughter-in-law." Emma nodded shyly. My mom walked over, smacking me lightly on the head. "You little rascal. I told you Victoria wasn't the right one, and now you've finally moved on. Good for you." I coughed awkwardly. "Mom, please, let's not mention Victoria in front of Emma." My mom, belatedly realizing her faux pas, quickly shifted gears and warmly invited Emma inside. She started with her questions right away. "Emma, when did you and Sincere meet? Are you two living together now? When are you planning to get married?" The barrage of questions was so relentless that even my dad, who usually wasn't the most perceptive, found it inappropriate. He pulled her aside and said, "The kids just got here to visit us, and you're already grilling them about marriage. You're going to make Emma uncomfortable." Emma smiled graciously and helped my dad to the couch. "Dad, Sincere and I are already married," she said gently. My parents were utterly stunned. My mom turned to my dad for confirmation. "Walter, did she just say they're married?" "I think so," he replied uncertainly. They stared at us in disbelief for what felt like an eternity before finally snapping out of it. Overjoyed, they began bombarding us with questions about the wedding plans, their excitement palpable. Just then, there was a knock at the door. My dad went to answer it, and to everyone's surprise, there stood Victoria. She was dressed extravagantly, her makeup heavy, and the overwhelming scent of her perfume filled the air. She smiled at my parents. "Mom, Dad, I came to see you." My parents had never liked Victoria. After dating her for a year and a half, I had brought her to meet them, hoping it would encourage her to cut ties with her two male friends and focus on our future together. But during that visit, she had made no effort to hide her disdain for them. Before leaving, my mom had offered her some homemade goods that my grandmother had passed down. Victoria had thrown them straight into the trash, saying, "These are so unhygienic. They're practically unregulated. Please don't eat this kind of stuff ever again." My mom had been stunned into silence, resorting to stuffing money into Victoria's hands instead. Even then, Victoria had refused, dismissing the cash as wrinkled and filthy, practically a breeding ground for bacteria. After that visit, I had tried to have a serious conversation with her. She had responded nonchalantly, "Sincere, let me make this clear. I just don't like having elderly people in the house. If you really love me and want to marry me, then stop interacting with them." I had looked at her in disbelief, asking, "What about your parents? Do you not interact with them either?" "That's different," she had replied. "My parents aren't like yours." I had laughed coldly and taken a step back. "So these rules only apply to my parents, is that it?" "Why make it sound so harsh?" she had retorted. "I'm just being honest. Old people are inherently messy. And when your parents get too old to take care of themselves, who's going to look after them? Do you expect me to do it? Besides, they're nagging and troublesome. I absolutely can't deal with that." At that moment, I had resolved to break up with her. Insulting me was one thing, but insulting my parents was a line I couldn't let her cross. However, before I could end things, I had been called away on an urgent business trip. When I returned, I had walked in on her and Ethan in bed together. Ethan had fled, bloodied and half-dressed, while Victoria had frantically tried to explain. I had remained calm, my voice icy as I said, "Don't say anything. We're done." Victoria's eyes widened in shock. After a long silence, she glared at me, her tone sharp. "Do you even know what you're saying? Are you insane? You're breaking up with me over something this trivial?" I had spoken slowly and deliberately. "I mean every word, Victoria. We're not compatible. Whether it's about caring for our parents or handling our relationship, we'll never see eye to eye. So let's end this here and move on." Victoria had tried to argue, but I had already made up my mind. "You were the one who pursued me first," I replied coldly. "So what, Victoria? Do you want me to spell it out for you, no matter how harsh it sounds? Just because I once pursued you, does that give you a free pass for life? Does that mean you can flaunt your charm wherever you like? Victoria, while I'm still willing to talk to you civilly, don't turn this into an ugly mess. All this time, it's been a one-sided effort from me. I paid for your master's degree, your food, your housing, everything. Search your conscience, if you even have one. What have you ever done for me?" She bit her lip and retorted, "What do you mean I haven't done anything for you? Are you blind? Didn't I get you a birthday gift? Didn't I play those games with you just because you loved them? Isn't that enough for you? What more do you want from me? How many girls buy gifts for their boyfriends or play video games with them? Why aren't you satisfied?" I chuckled mockingly. A birthday gift? I've bought you designer bags worth thousands, the latest phones costing hundreds. And what did you give me? A mouse pad and a hand warmer. And you played games with me? Oh, come on. Your childhood friend wouldn't play with you because you were so bad at it, so you just wanted to practice before going back to him, didn't you? As I listed these things, I realized just how ridiculous my past self had been. I continued, "Do you know the only reason I haven't laid a hand on you right now? It's not because I don't hit women, but because I refuse to let my first relationship be a complete and utter joke." Victoria interrupted. "Enough with your moral high ground. I don't want to hear it. You're just mad right now. But being mad doesn't make you right. Think it over, Sincere. When you've calmed down, come find me and apologize." Looking back at my 3 years of groveling, I almost wanted to slap myself. When Victoria showed up at my parents' house, my mom, Diana, frowned. "What are you doing here?" Victoria pressed her lips together. "Mom and Dad, I'm here to take Sincere home." Emma, who had been listening, smiled as she walked up to Victoria, gently taking her hand. "If you're here to give us a wedding gift, there's no need to be so roundabout about it. Sincere has been busy lately, so maybe skip the visit to your place, but we'd still appreciate the gift." Victoria yanked her hand away and shouted, "Who the hell are you? Look at you, acting all innocent. Stay away from me, you little schemer. What wedding gift? If there's going to be a wedding, it'll be between me and Sincere. Who do you think you are?" Emma leaned into me, tears welling in her eyes, and said pitifully, "Sincere, please don't blame her. How can you? She's just trying to have her cake and eat it too. Besides, it's not her fault she's shameless, it's just that she's a little brainless and maybe mentally unwell." Before Emma could finish, Victoria screamed, "How dare you insult me like that?" She raised her hand, aiming to slap Emma, but I grabbed her wrist mid-air. She struggled but couldn't break free. Then she opened her mouth, trying to bite my arm. Acting on impulse, I slapped her hard across the face. "Enough, Victoria," I roared. "Get out. You're not welcome here." Clutching her cheek, she screamed, "Sincere, I'm your girlfriend." Emma leaned closer and blinked, adding with a sly smile, "Isn't she your ex-girlfriend?" Victoria froze, her eyes welling up with tears. After a long pause, she said, her voice trembling, "Sincere, I don't need your apology anymore. I'll be more careful with other people in the future. Just don't break up with me, okay?" I laughed bitterly. "Do you really think I'm ending this just because of an apology? Victoria, stop being so full of yourself." She bit her lip. "I'm full of myself? Sincere, stop making it sound like I'm the one at fault here. You just don't want this relationship anymore, do you?" Rubbing my temples, I replied, "You're right. I don't want it anymore. This relationship is twisted, and I've had enough. Why is it always so hard to communicate with you?" Tears streamed down her face, but she still tried to sound tough. Pointing at me, she shouted, "You'll regret this." As I watched her storm away, I yelled after her, "Regret? That's not going to happen." "Oh, and Victoria, you're going the wrong way." With that, I shut the door firmly. That evening, back at home, Emma came over and started massaging my shoulders. Smiling, I pulled her down to sit beside me. "Em, let's go take our wedding photos in a few days," I said. She leaned against my shoulder and murmured, "Okay." I wrapped my arms around her, savoring her unique scent. Suddenly, I felt a strange sense of gratitude for that drunken mistake. "Em," I asked, "do you think we'd still have ended up together if it weren't for that night at the class reunion?" "Of course we would," she replied without hesitation. Gently stroking her face, I couldn't help but think back to my college days when I had secretly admired her from afar. Though her answer was resolute, I knew deep down that without that drunken encounter, we might never have crossed paths. After all, even at the reunion, it was only through the introduction of our class president that we officially met. Overwhelmed by a flood of emotions, I gazed at Emma and said, "Thank you for coming into my life." She playfully poked my cheek. "Well, I should thank you too for giving me the chance to become Mrs. S." Shaking my head, I replied, Not just now, but even back then. With a serious expression, she said, "Me too." I smiled faintly, thinking she might not have fully understood what I meant. So I confessed to her, "You might have only recently gotten to know me, but I've noticed you a long time ago." She replied, "That's not true." I asked, "What do you mean?" I couldn't quite grasp what Emma meant. She said, "I mean, I've also known you for a long time. We didn't just meet recently." Emma pouted slightly. I was stunned. I'd never thought that someone like Emma, who was the center of attention as the campus queen, would have noticed someone as unremarkable as me. "When?" I asked her. She smiled mysteriously and said, "It's a secret." Her eyes sparkled, clear and radiant. Unable to resist, I leaned in for a kiss. Emma didn't see it coming. For a moment she froze like a startled deer, then wrapped her arms around my neck and kissed me back. She said, "This time we're both sober, aren't we?" Tucking a strand of her hair behind her ear, I replied, "Yes, we are." Emma smiled sweetly, then loosened my tie and leaned into my ear, whispering, "Mr. S., I want to have a baby with you." "What about you?" The moonlight was enchanting, and we indulged ourselves passionately. On a particularly sunny day, Emma and I went to take our wedding photos. As soon as we arrived at the studio, the staff at the entrance exclaimed, "Wow, you two finally made it to the finish line." I asked, "Do you know us?" Emma raised a finger to her lips and gestured for the staff to stay quiet. Understanding her cue, they didn't directly answer my question. Instead, the staff introduced us to a promotion. "Our studio is running a special. You two are such a handsome couple. If you let us use your wedding photos for promotional purposes, we can offer you a discount." I wasn't inclined to have our photos used for advertising, but Emma seemed intrigued. She said, "If they hang our photos on the wall, everyone who passes by will know we're married and happy." On the way back, I kept thinking about what the staff had said, combined with Emma's mysterious demeanor the night before when she revealed her feelings. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something from me. So I asked her, "Em, have we been to the wedding studio before?" She replied, "Why do you ask?" I said. That staff member clearly recognized us and mentioned how we finally made it to the finish line. Emma smirked and asked teasingly, "So have you remembered?" I shook my head and said, "Sorry, I really can't think of anything." She covered her mouth, giggling, then quickened her pace. Turning back to me, she said, "Why don't you think a bit harder?" I caught up with her and asked, "Why so mysterious?" She replied, I scooped her up in my arms and asked, "Are you really not going to tell me, my love?" She gently pounded my back and said, "Not here. Put me down." Meanwhile, on a dark night, Victoria sat with tears streaming down her face, downing drink after drink, yet failing to get drunk. Tina, unable to bear it, snatched the glass from her hand and said, "How long are you going to stay this depressed?" Victoria raised her empty gaze to look at her best friend and said, "It's none of your business. I'm not sad. I'm just in a good mood, so I'm having a drink. Is that not allowed?" Tina retorted, "You don't look like you're in a good mood." Victoria clutched her wine glass, her lips trembling slightly, but said nothing. Tina pressed, "Victoria, what's going on?" Victoria ignored her, closing her eyes tightly and forcing down another glass, letting the alcohol burn its way down her throat. After a while, she said despondently, "Sincere doesn't want me anymore." Tina was shocked. "What? That's impossible. Didn't I tell you to take the initiative to make up with him? Didn't it work?" Victoria bit her lip, her voice as soft as the dying chirp of a nightingale. "No. We ended up arguing. He told me to get lost." Tina couldn't believe it. "What? He likes you so much? That doesn't make any sense. Victoria, be honest. Did you do something crazy again?" Victoria took another sip of her drink and stayed silent. Suddenly, Tina's phone buzzed with a new message. She opened it to see, "Sis, my private investigator just got back to me. Guess what? Sincere was spotted taking wedding photos with another woman." Victoria's grip on her glass tightened. She said, "Do you think what Sincere told me before was true? Did they really get their marriage license? No, that can't be it. Sincere doesn't want me because of the obstacles between us. our parents, our friends, not because he's fallen for someone else. Tina replied, "Well, you never know, life's full of surprises." Victoria glared at her and snapped, "Whose side are you on?" Tina pursed her lips and fell silent. Victoria continued drinking, the bitterness and burn of the alcohol numbing her senses. She muttered, "No way. It's not true. He's liked me for 3 years. How could he just give up like that? It must be a misunderstanding, or they've mistaken him for someone else. Yes, that must be it." Tina sighed. "Victoria, stop torturing yourself. If you can't have him, let him go. This isn't good for you. They're already married. Chasing him won't change anything. What, are you going to make him get a divorce?" Victoria's eyes suddenly lit up. "Divorce? Yes, divorce. So what if they're married? People can still get divorced, right?" "Don't you think so?" Tina replied. "Victoria, stop being so stubborn, will you?" Victoria shook her head. "No, you don't understand. I truly love Sincere. Without him, I can't go on." Standing up, Tina said, "If only you had known better, Ethan." It was Monday, and as soon as I stepped out of the house, Victoria was waiting by the door. Her hair was a mess, and the dark circles under her eyes were alarming. I confronted her. "What exactly are you trying to do?" She replied, "I want to be with you." Emma stood between Victoria and me, her tone calm as she said, "I'm afraid that's not possible. After all, he's already married to me." Victoria snapped, "You? As if you're worthy." She lunged forward, trying to grab Emma, but I shoved her to the ground, shielding Emma behind me. "Victoria, if you have an issue, take it out on me. Stop acting like a rabid dog and biting whoever you see," I said coldly. Victoria got back up and clung to me hysterically. "Sincere, you can't treat me like this. I'm here to make amends. Can't you see my feelings? I know you still love me, don't you? Divorce her, and we can get married again. Please." I pushed her away firmly and sneered. "Your feelings? Cheating was your way of expressing them. And not just once, but twice. What are you going to say next? That you cheated for my sake? Do you think I enjoy being humiliated? Stay with your little trio and leave the rest of us out of it. No one cares." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, you have to believe me. There's nothing between them and me. I've only ever loved you. Always." She tried to approach me again, but I gritted my teeth and warned, "Victoria, are you stupid? If you take one more step, don't blame me for slapping you. Do you not understand plain English? Do I need to spell it out for you? Someone like you talking about love is laughable. A sewer would run pure water before you could understand what love is. Look at yourself in the mirror. If you're trash, get in the trash can. If you're spoiled tofu, go soak in brine. Stop coming out here and making everyone sick." Victoria stared at me in a daze. Perhaps she still couldn't comprehend why I'd gone from being so gentle during our relationship to treating her with such harsh words after our breakup. But that's just who I am, soft for those I love, sharp for those who deserve it. Considering our 3 years together, I probably shouldn't have been this cruel, but she came looking for it, and not responding would have been an injustice to my wit. In a trembling voice she said, "Sincere, you weren't like this before." I chuckled and replied, "I've always been like this. If you can handle it, stay. If not, leave." Victoria stood frozen, unable to move forward or backward. Emma smiled and offered, "Shall I walk you out?" Victoria glanced at Emma, then turned and walked away, utterly defeated. As she left, she muttered through her tears, "Sincere, I'll keep waiting for you. I'll wait until your marriage with her becomes a nightmare, until you're left heartbroken. Then you'll realize that no one but me has ever been so foolishly devoted to you." I snorted and replied, "Go ahead. Wait until you're old and alone, until you're senile, until you're 6 feet under. Then you'll finally understand your entire life was a joke." After Victoria left, Emma gave me a thumbs up and said with a grin, "Mr. S, you're just as sharp as ever. The future looks bright." I raised an eyebrow. "Just as sharp as ever. Emma brought a finger to her lips. Shh, it's a secret. I laughed and pulled her into my arms. Another secret? She nodded, her voice soft. Yep, a secret. After that day, Victoria never showed up again. Emma and I grew closer with each passing day. Our families eventually arranged a wedding for us. Backstage at the wedding, Billy handed me a pink diary. Congrats on the wedding, bro. Here's a gift. Oh, and by the way, hurry up and have a kid with my sister. My parents are driving me crazy at home, constantly shouting about wanting a grandchild. I chuckled at his antics. Opening the diary, I realized it was Emma's journal. The entries painted a picture of her feelings over the years. October, Monday, cloudy. The school hosted a debate today, and I was blown away by one of the debaters. He's undoubtedly the best I've ever seen. October 20th, 2017, Friday, sunny, found out the name of the best debater, sincere. November 8th, 2017, Wednesday, overcast, got backstabbed today. Felt awful. But unexpectedly, I heard some good news. He doesn't have a girlfriend. April 11th, 2018, Wednesday, cloudy. Attended an elective lecture today and saw him there. What a lucky day. May 25th, 2018, Friday, sunny. Had an allergic reaction and broke out in spots. On my way to the clinic, I bumped into him. Luckily, I had on a mask and hat. He didn't recognize me. May 26, 2018, Saturday, sunny, ran into him on the same road again, still wearing my mask and hat, and he still didn't recognize me. I was standing in front of a bridal shop, lost in thought, and he thought I needed help. He asked if I wanted to try on wedding dresses and said I'd look beautiful in one, even though he couldn't see my face. May 27, 2018, Sunday, cloudy, passed by the bridal shop again. Remembered what he said and decided to go in. The staff were so kind. Before I left, one of them whispered that they hoped I'd come back with my groom one day. I showed them his picture and said, I'll definitely come back with him. July 16, 2019, Tuesday, sunny. Someone tried to pick a fight with me for no reason. He saw it and stood up for me. As I read her words, I couldn't help but smile, my heart swelling with warmth. Emma, my Emma, had loved me all along. Swearing with such finesse, no wonder you're the best debater. December 25th, 2019. Snow, Christmas Day. I wanted to ask him out, but someone beat me to it. I don't know if he said yes. These kinds of diary entries filled several pages. I flipped through them one by one, reading every word. The wedding began. The bride and groom walked in. I watched as Emma slowly approached me. The sunlight poured in, casting a golden glow all around. We locked eyes. I smiled and said, I know now. She asked, know what? I replied, your secret. She smiled too. Ah, you found out, huh? It turns out everything was destined. The breeze brushed against Emma's hair like a tender, lingering kiss. Under the spring breeze, we made our vows. In the warmth of love, we shared a passionate kiss. We have a lifetime ahead of us, and together we will walk through it hand in hand.